What if I told you that two people can be exactly the same age on paper, yet one of them is aging years faster on the inside? In other words, your driver's license might say you're 55 years old, but your cells could be functioning like they're 45 or 65. This is one of the most important discoveries in modern longevity science, and it's the work of Dr. Steve Horvath, one of the world's leading aging researchers and the creator of the famous Horvath clock, a tool that measures your biological age using changes in your DNA known as epigenetic markers. Research over the last decade has shown that biological age is often a stronger predictor of health, disease risk, and longevity than chronological age alone. And here's the exciting part. Biological age is not completely fixed. The choices you make every day, what you eat, how you sleep, whether you exercise, how you manage stress, and even the quality of your relationships can influence how quickly your body ages. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every day, your cells are responding to signals. Signals from insulin, signals from inflammation, signals from stress hormones like cortisol, signals from nutrients, movement, and recovery. When those signals are healthy and balanced, your cells stay resilient. When those signals are constantly pushing your body into inflammation, insulin resistance, and chronic stress, your biological clock starts ticking faster. Think of your body like a bank account. Every healthy habit is a deposit. Every night of poor sleep, every ultra-processed meal, every period of chronic stress is a withdrawal. Over decades, those deposits and withdrawals determine how well your body functions as you age. In today's video, we're going to break down the 7 habits that consistently show up in people who age more slowly according to the latest longevity research and the work surrounding epigenetic aging. We'll talk about metabolism, muscle, sleep, stress, nutrition, inflammation, and the surprisingly powerful daily behaviors that can help keep your biological age younger than your calendar age. And if you're interested in practical, science-based strategies for optimizing your health naturally, make sure you're subscribed. We post evidence-based content every day designed to help you improve energy, metabolic health, and longevity. Let's begin with the first habit. One of the strongest patterns researchers see in people who age more slowly is surprisingly simple. They maintain healthy insulin levels throughout life. Now, this doesn't mean insulin is bad. Insulin is an essential hormone. You need it to move glucose from your bloodstream into your cells where it can be used for energy. The problem begins when insulin stays elevated all day, every day. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine insulin as a storage manager in a warehouse. Every time you eat, especially refined carbohydrates and sugary foods, insulin receives a shipment and decides where that energy should go. When shipments arrive occasionally, the system works beautifully. But when trucks arrive nonstop, from constant snacking, sugary drinks, processed foods, and frequent eating, the warehouse becomes overloaded. Eventually, the cells stop responding efficiently to insulin signals. This is called insulin resistance. Here's what's really going on inside your body. As insulin resistance develops, the pancreas produces even more insulin to compensate. High insulin levels promote fat storage, increase inflammation, stress the liver, and impair metabolic flexibility, the body's ability to switch between burning glucose and burning fat. Over time, this metabolic dysfunction accelerates many of the biological processes associated with aging. Research consistently links insulin resistance and elevated blood sugar with faster biological aging, increased cardiovascular risk, cognitive decline, and reduced lifespan. In other words, if you want to age slower, one of the most powerful places to start is metabolic health. So what do people who age slower actually do? First, they reduce ultra-processed foods and added sugars. Second, they prioritize protein, healthy fats, vegetables, and fiber-rich whole foods that create a more stable blood sugar response. Third, many naturally create longer gaps between meals rather than grazing all day. For example, a simple 12 to 14-hour overnight fasting window can give insulin levels time to fall and allow the body to access stored energy. They also move after meals. Even a 10-minute walk can significantly improve glucose disposal and reduce the insulin response. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Every day we break down complex health science into practical strategies you can actually use. Because when it comes to slowing biological aging, controlling insulin isn't about perfection. It's about creating an environment where your cells can function efficiently, repair effectively, and remain metabolically youthful for decades. If there is one tissue in the body that predicts healthy aging better than almost anything else, it's muscle. In fact, many longevity researchers now view muscle as one of the most important organs of healthy aging. Yet most people don't think about muscle until they start losing it. Here's the problem. Beginning as early as our 30s, we naturally lose muscle mass every decade unless we actively work to maintain it. This age-related decline, known as sarcopenia, is associated with weakness, insulin resistance, falls, frailty, and a significantly higher risk of chronic disease. But muscle does much more than help you move. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Muscle acts like a giant glucose reservoir. When you eat carbohydrates, healthy muscle tissue can absorb and store glucose efficiently, reducing the burden on insulin and helping stabilize blood sugar. Muscle also releases signaling molecules called myokines that influence inflammation, immune function, brain health, and metabolism. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of muscle as your body's metabolic engine. A larger, stronger engine burns fuel more efficiently, handles stress better, and keeps the entire system running smoothly. A smaller engine struggles under the same demands. This is one reason why people with greater muscle mass often maintain a younger biological age and lower risk of metabolic disease. So what do people who age slower do differently? First, they prioritize resistance training consistently, not necessarily extreme workouts. Just regular strength training 2 to 4 times per week using weights, resistance bands, body weight exercises, or machines. Second, they consume adequate protein throughout the day. Many longevity experts recommend aiming for roughly 25 to 40 grams of high-quality protein per meal, depending on body size and activity level. Foods such as eggs, fish, poultry, Greek yogurt, lean meats, and legumes can help support muscle maintenance. Third, they stay physically active outside the gym. Walking, carrying groceries, gardening, climbing stairs, and other daily movements help preserve muscle function over time. What the research shows is that strength, muscle mass, and physical function are consistently associated with healthier aging and lower mortality risk. The goal isn't to look like a bodybuilder. The goal is to build a body that remains strong, resilient, and metabolically healthy for decades. Because every pound of muscle you preserve today becomes an investment in your future health, independence, and longevity. One of the most overlooked habits of people who age slower has nothing to do with diet, supplements, or exercise. It's sleep. And not just getting enough sleep, but getting high-quality, restorative sleep consistently. Many people think of sleep as downtime. In reality, sleep is one of the most biologically active periods of the day. Here's what's really going on inside your body. While you're sleeping, your brain clears metabolic waste, your immune system performs repair work, your hormones reset, and your cells activate processes that help maintain healthy tissues. When sleep is consistently disrupted, these repair systems begin to break down. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine you own a factory that operates 24 hours a day. During the day, the factory produces products. At night, maintenance crews come in to repair machines, replace damaged parts, clean the facility, and prepare everything for the next shift. Now imagine canceling maintenance every night. Eventually, the equipment starts failing. That's essentially what happens when sleep becomes chronically inadequate. Research has linked poor sleep to higher cortisol levels, increased insulin resistance, greater inflammation, impaired cognitive function, weight gain, and accelerated biological aging. Even a few nights of poor sleep can negatively affect blood sugar control and appetite-regulating hormones. This helps explain why people often crave sugary foods after a bad night's sleep. Their biology is literally pushing them toward quick energy. So what do people who age slower do differently? First, they maintain a consistent sleep schedule. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time every day helps regulate the body's circadian rhythm. Second, they get morning sunlight exposure. Just 10 to 20 minutes of natural light shortly after waking helps synchronize the body's internal clock and improve nighttime melatonin production. Third, they reduce artificial light exposure in the evening, especially from phones, tablets, and bright screens. Fourth, they create an environment that supports sleep: cool, dark, quiet, and free from unnecessary distractions. And if this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Every day we share practical, science-based strategies that help you improve your health naturally. Because when it comes to slowing biological aging, sleep isn't a luxury. It's one of the most powerful anti-aging tools available, and it's completely free. One of the biggest reasons some people seem to age faster than others comes down to a process scientists often call inflammaging. The name is exactly what it sounds like: aging driven by chronic inflammation. Now, inflammation itself is not the enemy. In fact, acute inflammation is essential for healing. If you cut your finger or fight off an infection, inflammation helps your body repair and recover. The problem is chronic low-grade inflammation that never fully switches off. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When inflammatory signals remain elevated for years, they gradually damage blood vessels, impair insulin sensitivity, accelerate cellular aging, disrupt hormone function, and increase the risk of conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, cognitive decline, and many age-related illnesses. The challenge is that most people don't feel this process happening. It's often silent. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine a small fire burning inside a house. A large fire gets immediate attention. but a tiny fire smoldering behind the walls for years can slowly weaken the entire structure without anyone noticing. That's what chronic inflammation does inside the body. So, where does it come from? Common sources include excess body fat, particularly visceral fat around the organs, poor blood sugar control, smoking, chronic stress, lack of sleep, physical inactivity, environmental toxins, and diets dominated by ultra-processed foods. People who age slower actively reduce these inflammatory triggers. First, they build their diets around whole, nutrient-dense foods: vegetables, berries, olive oil, nuts, seeds, fish, legumes, herbs, and high-quality proteins provide compounds that help regulate inflammatory pathways. Second, they prioritize omega-3 fats from fatty fish such as salmon, sardines, and mackerel, which have been shown to support healthy inflammatory balance. Third, they avoid excessive sugar and highly processed foods that can contribute to insulin resistance and inflammatory stress. Fourth, they maintain a healthy waistline. This is important because visceral fat functions like an inflammatory organ, releasing chemical messengers that accelerate metabolic dysfunction. What the research shows is that lower levels of chronic inflammation are consistently associated with healthier aging and a reduced risk of age-related disease. The goal is not to eliminate inflammation. The goal is to create an internal environment where inflammation appears when needed and then resolves efficiently. That's one of the defining characteristics of a biologically younger body. Modern life has created a strange paradox. Many people work harder than ever to improve their health through diet and exercise, yet they remain chronically stressed, mentally exhausted, and biologically overwhelmed. And from an aging perspective, that's a major problem. Because chronic stress doesn't just affect your mood, it affects virtually every system in your body. Here's what's really going on inside your body. When you encounter a stressful situation, your brain activates the stress response system and releases hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. In the short term, this response is incredibly useful. It increases alertness, mobilizes energy, and helps you respond to challenges. The problem occurs when the stress response never fully turns off. Instead of experiencing occasional stress followed by recovery, many people live in a constant state of low-grade physiological alarm. Over time, elevated cortisol can increase insulin resistance, promote abdominal fat storage, impair sleep quality, weaken immune function, increase inflammation, and accelerate biological aging. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of cortisol like the emergency generator in a building. It's designed to switch on during emergencies. But if the generator runs 24 hours a day, every day, eventually the system wears down. That's what chronic stress does to the body. Research has shown that persistent psychological stress is associated with changes in biological aging markers, including epigenetic aging patterns linked to longevity and disease risk. People who age slower understand something important. Stress is unavoidable, but chronic activation of the stress response is not. So what do they do differently? First, they build recovery into their daily routine, not occasionally, daily. This might include meditation, prayer, breathing exercises, nature walks, journaling, or simply spending time without constant digital stimulation. Second, they prioritize boundaries. They recognize that constantly saying yes to everything often means saying no to their health. Third, they exercise regularly, which helps regulate stress hormones and improves resilience. And fourth, they make time for meaningful relationships, which we'll discuss later because social connection has powerful effects on stress biology. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Every day, we explore practical, evidence-based strategies that help you take control of your health naturally. Because the goal isn't to eliminate stress. The goal is to become biologically resilient enough that stress doesn't control your metabolism, your hormones, or the rate at which you age. One of the biggest misconceptions in health is that a single workout can compensate for an entire day of sitting. Unfortunately, your biology doesn't work that way. You can spend an hour in the gym and still experience many of the negative effects of prolonged inactivity if you remain seated for the other 15 waking hours. People who age slower understand this. They don't just exercise, they move consistently throughout the day. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your body evolved in an environment where regular movement was unavoidable. Walking, lifting, climbing, carrying, and changing positions were part of daily survival. Today, many people spend most of their day sitting at desks, in cars, or in front of screens. The result is a dramatic reduction in energy expenditure, blood flow, muscle activation, and metabolic activity. When movement decreases, glucose disposal becomes less efficient, insulin sensitivity declines, circulation slows, and mitochondrial function can suffer. Remember, mitochondria are the tiny energy-producing structures inside your cells. Many scientists refer to them as the power plants of the body. Healthy mitochondria are strongly associated with healthy aging. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine a river. When water flows continuously, the river stays clean and healthy. But when water becomes stagnant, debris accumulates and the ecosystem begins to deteriorate. Movement creates flow throughout the body. It improves circulation, nutrient delivery, waste removal, and cellular communication. This is one reason physically active individuals often maintain better metabolic health and lower biological age markers as they grow older. So what do people who age slower do differently? First, they walk frequently. Many aim for 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day, though even smaller increases can provide meaningful benefits. Second, they avoid sitting for long, uninterrupted periods. A simple strategy is standing up and moving for 2 to 5 minutes every 30 to 60 minutes. Third, they combine structured exercise with regular daily activity. Think walks after meals, taking stairs, parking farther away, gardening, household projects, or carrying groceries. These small actions add up dramatically over time. The secret isn't extreme exercise, it's consistent movement. Because from your body's perspective, aging slower often comes down to keeping your cells active, your metabolism engaged, and your internal systems in motion every single day. If I asked most people to name the factors that influence longevity, they'd probably mention diet, exercise, sleep, or supplements. Very few would immediately think about friendships, family relationships, community, or purpose. Yet some of the most fascinating longevity research suggests these factors may be just as important as many physical health habits. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Human beings are biologically wired for connection. When social bonds are strong, the brain tends to perceive the environment as safer and more predictable. This influences stress hormones, immune function, inflammation levels, and even cardiovascular health. Conversely, chronic loneliness can trigger many of the same biological pathways activated by physical stress. Research has repeatedly linked social isolation with increased risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, depression, and premature mortality. In some studies, the health impact of loneliness has been compared to other major risk factors because of its profound effect on physiology. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your body like a complex orchestra. Nutrition, exercise, sleep, and movement are important instruments, but social connection and purpose act like the conductor. Without coordination, even talented musicians struggle to create harmony. Similarly, when people lack meaningful relationships or a reason to get up in the morning, healthy behaviors often become harder to sustain. One reason many centenarian populations around the world remain healthier into old age is that they stay socially engaged and connected to their communities. They continue contributing, mentoring, learning, helping, and participating. Their lives maintain meaning. People who age slower tend to do the same. They invest in relationships. They spend time with family and friends. They participate in communities, volunteer work, faith groups, hobbies, or activities that create connection. Most importantly, they cultivate purpose. Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It can be raising grandchildren, helping neighbors, teaching others, building a business, creating art, or simply making a positive impact on the people around you. The key is having something that pulls you forward. Because longevity isn't just about adding years to life. It's about adding life to those years. And when strong relationships combine with a clear sense of purpose, the benefits extend far beyond emotional well-being. They become part of the biological foundation of healthy aging itself. Conclusion. So, what can we learn from people who consistently age slower than their peers? The answer is both encouraging and empowering. They don't rely on a secret supplement. They don't possess rare genetics, and they aren't chasing every new health trend that appears online. Instead, they consistently practice a set of habits that create a healthier internal environment, one that supports cellular repair, metabolic flexibility, hormonal balance, and long-term resilience. Let's quickly recap what we've covered. People who age slower protect their metabolic health and avoid chronically elevated insulin. They build and preserve muscle because muscle is one of the body's most powerful longevity organs. They prioritize sleep because that's when much of the body's repair and recovery takes place. They actively reduce chronic inflammation through nutrition, movement, and healthy lifestyle choices. They manage stress before it becomes a biological burden that accelerates aging. They move throughout the day to support circulation, mitochondrial function, and metabolic health. And finally, they invest in meaningful relationships and a sense of purpose that strengthens both emotional and physical well-being. Notice something important. None of these habits are extreme. They're sustainable, and that's exactly why they work. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every meal, every night of sleep, every workout, every walk, every moment of recovery, and every meaningful social interaction sends signals to your cells. Those signals influence inflammation, they influence insulin, they influence hormones, they influence gene expression. And over time, those signals influence how quickly or how slowly you age. This is one of the most powerful messages from Dr. Steve Horvath's work and the broader field of epigenetic aging research. Your biological age is not simply something that happens to you, it's something that responds to the environment you create every day. That's why I want to leave you with a simple challenge. Don't try to implement all 7 habits at once. Choose just one. Maybe it's a 15-minute walk after dinner. Maybe it's going to bed 30 minutes earlier. Maybe it's adding more protein to breakfast or scheduling time with someone you care about. Start with one habit and track how your body responds over the next few weeks. Small changes repeated consistently often create the biggest transformations. And if this video added value to your life, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Join our community of people who are committed to improving their health, energy, metabolism, and longevity naturally. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.